Is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. We have a nice little 5-gamer here. We don't have, the latest game I think is 8:30 Eastern. It's not like we have 4 games at like 7 and then one at 10:30, and you have to wait until wee hours of the morning to finish the slate. This should be done 11 p.m. Eastern, which is nice. The quality of the slate to be determined. Any slate can turn into a good slate if you win the monies. Can't hit the nuts if you don't play. Yada, yada, yada. But to help me break it down, looks like he is wearing his Slytherin robe. Slim Cliffy, what's going on?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Just another Monday here. Interesting 5-game slate ahead of us. We were talking about yesterday's games before we came on the show. Getting pretty sick and tired of the Vancouver Canucks. Like, there are teams that I probably won't watch another Chicago Blackhawks game the rest of the season. Probably won't watch another Nashville game. Probably won't watch another Buffalo game, so on and so forth. I can't watch any more Vancouver Canucks games. Saturday night, 6 goals at 5-on-5 on 1.06 expected goals for. I think it was, I've dropped it in the Discord. Saturday night was the second time in the last 4 years that a team has scored 6 goals at 5-on-5 with 15 or fewer shots. The other time was 2 years ago, and it was also the Vancouver Canucks. Like, it's just absolutely wild how this team does it. I just don't find them very fun to watch. So I was happy to see Utah win last night. Only caught the first 2 periods of Colorado-Dallas. Remember last year when Dallas and Vegas were in the first round, and that was like probably the best series of the entire playoffs, and absolutely nobody watched it because all the games were at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I feel like we're going to get the same thing this year because Dallas and Colorado look like they're going to face off in the first round, barring one of the teams falling way out of it or Winnipeg falling way back, and then another team, one of Dallas or Colorado taking them over. Like, we're probably going to get Dallas, Colorado first round. I honestly cannot wait for that series. That is going to be, honestly, might be the series of the playoffs again. Dallas had quite the comeback in the third period yesterday. Obviously, they lost in overtime, but that was yesterday. Today is today. As you mentioned, all the games are relatively early. 3 games at 7 Eastern, 1 at 7:30, 1 at 8. So the slate will be over fairly early. You should know where you stand fairly quickly. At this time of year, there's always games with playoff implications, like just because Columbus is playing and because Calgary's playing. But there's nothing like Vancouver, Utah yesterday was literally like a 20-point swing in probability for the Vancouver Canucks losing in regulation for a playoff berth. Rangers and Columbus the day before. So there's nothing like that, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some very intriguing matchups. There's a lot of injuries to talk about, especially in the first game. So we'll take our time going through these games, but still some interesting matchups. I'd say just about every team is in play, as they usually are on 5-game slates. We'll see where ownership sits as we go through it, because that'll probably determine where I want to go and where I don't.
Yeah, and we're waiting on a update. When we get it, we'll let you know on the top stacks. But that first game, battle of the basement dwellers. But before we get into this slate, thanks for hanging out with us on this lovely Monday afternoon. I guess was St. Patrick's Day yesterday or today? I don't even know.
Pretty sure it's today.
Yeah, so yeah. I was up slaving for the ball and chain upstairs, making some corned beef and cabbage this morning. Agent Spencer likes it. That's all that matters. But if you do want to go premium, you can click that Stochastic link. Use promo code Stochastic15. They'll get you 15% off any week or month of your first subscription. If you do want to join OddsShopper, click that bottom link, join with Portfolio EV. I think there's a 68% off code on oddshopper.com right in time for March Madness. So go check that out. let's get into this slate, shall we? First game, the Buffalo Sabres with a 3 total heading into Boston. Bruins have a 3 total. Boston going Pastrnak, Geeky, and Zaka, Middlestat, Letary, Kolkepke. Buffalo going Greenway, Tage, Thompson, Alex Tuck, Zucker, McLeod, Benson. So Peterka, Kulik. There's one other who's out for Buffalo. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's not coming to me off the top of my head, but yeah.
I'm drawing a blank, but yeah, it'll come to me when we're talking about like the Kings game probably. And you're looking at the top stacks currently constituted. Buffalo, or why do I keep doing that? Boston won. Not only is 20,300, which is the second highest line on the night once we get the new Toronto lines in the top stack. They have the highest top 2 stack of the night at 25.3%, 13.7% projected ownership. I'm a bit kerfuffled. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm going to use kerfuffle. I don't particularly want a full stack Boston 1 here. I will say, with all these injuries and they haven't been great this season at all. Their goaltending hasn't been great. Penalty killing hasn't been great. Buffalo's pretty bad. But I still don't really want to spend over $20,000 for Boston 1. If you want a one-off Pastrnak, you want to pair him with Geeky because they're both on the top power play unit, that's fine. You want to leave off Zaka and add in Middlestat, that'll save you $1,500, and then you're at 18.8. It's more doable. I still don't love doing it. I think really for me, like Pastrnak one-off, if you need a cheap-ish punt, Casey Middlestat one-off is fine, but I don't particularly want to stack Boston 1. And it's not like they have a good power play either. You know what I mean? So it's not like you can power play stack with confidence. But if I were, I'd leave off Geeky and add in Middlestat, make it a little bit more of a cheaper stack. The depth of Boston, I don't have any interest in outside of like a Middlestat one-off. If you're down to you need a cheap center in a lineup you like, Middlestat's fine. The Buffalo side is a little bit more interesting to me because they're cheaper. Thompson, Tuck, Greenway, $17,700. They're $2,600 cheaper than Boston 1. In a limited sample, they've played pretty well together. You get Thompson and Tuck on the top power play unit. Boston's a shell of their former selves from the beginning of the season. They weren't even good at the beginning of the season. This team's pretty rough. I do like Buffalo 1 here. If you do want to make it a little more expensive, you can leave off Greenway and add in like a Zucker or a Quinn. Quinn would add 1,000. Zucker would add 2,000. Still both under 20K if you wanted the full stack. I'm still fine with a just straight up Buffalo 1 stack. That's really about it. I don't think I want a full stack either of the depth lines. One off Zucker or one off Quinn is fine, but I think it would be both top lines in this game. And I'll be honest, I'm not super thrilled about either side.
This feels like one of those games where both teams are so bad. Oh, by the way, it was Josh Norris. As mentioned in the chat. Yeah,
of course we forgot about Norris.
Yeah, completely forgot. I mean, I wish I could honestly just forget about it forever. I do wonder if this is one of those games where both teams are so bad that they just kind of donkey fuck the puck around and it's 2-1, or both teams are so bad that they've just kind of both given up on the season and it ends up 7-5. I think, judging by both these teams, it doesn't seem like either. I mean, obviously it's more likely to finish a 2-1 game. We don't very often get 12 goals, but my point is like neither of these teams are very good. But with Peterka, Norris, and Kulik out of the lineup for Buffalo, that hurts them offensively. It doesn't hurt them defensively, right? Like those aren't the defensive stalwarts, if there really are any on this roster, of the team. It just hurts their goal scoring. And you mentioned Tage and Greenway, like they've been fine together. Like going back to last year, over 200 minutes for Tage Thompson and Jordan Greenway at 5-on-5, 2.7 goals per 60, 2.7 expected goals per 60 as well. So like above average, they've been fine. I honestly think I'd be more tempted to dip down to the second line. And the reason is like with Peterka out and Kulik out and Norris out, they moved Ryan McLeod to the top power play unit. So you can get Zucker, McLeod as two guys on the top power play. And Boston's penalty kill has been getting better since the Four Nations. That's one thing that I'm kind of worried about is like maybe Boston's penalty kill finishes the season strong after being pretty bad through like the first 50 games. But you get Zucker, McLeod on the top power play unit with all the injuries. Like the Zucker, like Ryan McLeod's probably going to play 20 minutes, right? Jason Zucker's probably going to play like 18 minutes. Even Zach Benson, who typically hasn't been getting a lot of ice time, is probably going to play 15 or 16 minutes. Like you're going to get decent ice time out of these guys for $13,300. You're going to get two guys on the top power play unit. They're priced at a spot where, you can pair them with other mid-price lines across the slate. Like we'll get to, Tampa Bay, we'll get to, New Jersey, we'll get to Columbus. Like there are a bunch of mid-price lines you can pair with them, and it allows you to spend up for one of the expensive defensemen on the board. Because I know we're going to talk about defensemen at the end of this slate. When I was going through defensemen on this slate this morning, the only thing that ran through my head is like, I think this is the worst slate for defensemen this season. Obviously, I have no real way to quantify that, but I was looking at all the defensemen basically under 5K, and there weren't very many that I wanted to play here tonight. Or, by that I mean that projected net very well for me. And there's none that project very well at Stokastic either. So this is a night where, generally speaking, I'm not looking to spend up on too expensive lines. So I think Buffalo 2 might be where I'm most interested. Now, if you want to take off Benson and put in Tage Thompson, he is the engine of the offense of this team. If he hadn't gotten hurt, he'd probably be scoring 40 goals this year. He might score 40 anyway. But it's Buffalo 2 I kind of like. It's the only I'm fine playing Buffalo 1 here. Thompson and Tuck have generally played fine together. Like I said, Thompson is the engine of the offense. Tage Thompson, 34 shots over his last 10 games. So even as the team necessarily hasn't been doing much, he's been doing well, at least on the shot counter. So I'm perfectly fine like taking out Benson, putting in Thompson. But I think it's Zucker, McLeod, Benson that I like best on the Buffalo side. On the Boston side, like generally speaking, I'm not a fan of the Bruins. They're also at home against the worst team in the Eastern Conference. And like Pasternak and Geeky are probably going to have to play 19, 20 minutes. They're still on the top power play unit. Buffalo's penalty kill is just like flat out bad. If you go back to the Four Nations break, Buffalo's PK last in the league by goals against per minute. Not what you want to see if you're a Buffalo Sabres fan or on the team. Going back 5 weeks, not including the Four Nations break, they're fourth most goals against per minute on the penalty kill. If you go back to January 1st, sixth most goals against per minute. So this has been a bad penalty kill for about half the season, and it's been getting progressively worse. So like, it's not like Boston has a good power play or anything, but this is a pretty bad PK. And if Boston's power play was ever going to get on the board, seems like a decent night for it. And Buffalo's been taking a lot of penalties over the last 5 weeks, 16 games, 3.1 times shorthanded per game. It's the second highest rate in the league. If you go back to January 1st, 27 games or a third of the full season, fourth most penalties or time shorthanded per game. So like Boston might get 3 or 4 power plays here tonight. I do like Boston 1 in theory, but like I said, I think this is a night where I'm not spending up for an expensive line. So I think I'd be a lot more tempted by a Pasternak one-off and, stacking a couple mid-priced lines with them than I would be just full stacking a $20,300 Boston top line. Other than that, like If you want to do like a middle stat Kepke, like 2-man or something like that, that's okay. But I think it's basically a Pasternak one-off is easily my favorite play in this game. On the Buffalo side, if I'm going to stack anything, it's probably the second line. You can take out Benson and put in Thompson, but I think it's the second line. Like I said, McLeod's probably going to play 20 minutes. You get 2 out of 3 guys on the top power play unit.
I'd take the over there, Frank. Every game on this slate sucks. By the way, the Bruins game sucks. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.2 total heading into Tampa. The Lightning have a 3.4 total. This game also sucks. Tampa, they won 11-7 the other night. I don't know if they're going to go 11-7 today. They have Darren Radish as the 7th defenseman, which is why he's a right winger or why he's a winger on DraftKings. They had an optional this morning, so as it was, they went Kucherov, Hagel, Cirelli, Gensel, Point, Gord, and then it was Paul, Bjorkstrand, Goncalves, Antonio Banderas. You know what I mean? The Flyers didn't practice yesterday. God knows what their lines could be tonight, but as they were the last game, it was Tippett, Michkov, Couturier, Konechny, Forrester, Cates. Ivan Fedotov in net, by the way, for the Flyers. He's definitely not better than Sam Ersson. I don't know how much worse he is than Sam Ersson. There's levels to this game, and they're just all sorts of bad. I don't have much interest in the Flyers from a full stacking standpoint. They have a 2.2 total. That's just atrocious. It's one of the lowest totals on the season. Don't know what the lines are. We're just guessing. Torts could go back to the same lines. That wouldn't surprise me. Torts could put everything in a blender. That also wouldn't surprise me. I think, at the end of the day, I don't have a ton of interest even in one-offs. Michkov is 5,400. That's a little expensive for my taste. Like, if anything, it would be Travis Konechny at 6K. But again, I don't have a ton of interest in the Flyers. It's the Tampa side that really interests me. Kucherov, Hagel, Cirelli, 200 minutes plus this season. Pretty much 4 expected goals for per 60, 3.2 actual. This line's been nasty. I don't particularly give a crap what the matchup is. Like, the Flyers generally have been okay defensively. The problem is their goaltending sucks. So I do really like the Kucherov line here. The one issue that I'm kind of running into with that is it's a really good power play spot. So, like, maybe you get in another power play guy there. You add in, I like that line as it's constituted, 19,900, 21.8% top 2 stack, 12.8% projected ownership. But again, it's a really good power play spot. I don't love taking one of these guys off and adding in a Point or Gensel because it makes it so much more expensive. But at the same time, I don't mind going to that Gensel, Point, Gord line for that reason at 17.8. They have a 13.1% top 2 stack, 9.9% projected ownership. You get 2 of the 3 guys on the top power play unit there. Gord seemed pretty fine there. From a 5-on-5 standpoint, I prefer the Kucherov line. But at the same time, I want power play guys, and I want to build around Kucherov if I'm going to do power play. So I feel like it would be like that Kucherov line, leave off Hagel, and add in either a Point or a Gensel. But that just, I don't know. Like, I think I would just end up full stacking either of these lines, and I lean towards the Kucherov line.
Yeah. I'll start on the Flyers side just because I feel like this is going to go fairly quickly. The only line, assuming Tippett, Michkov, and Couturier are together, big assumption, we won't find out until warm. Like, I know there are a couple beat writers in Tampa for the game. I don't think there's been any sort of morning skate or coaches availability or anything. Like, we literally don't. And the reason I bring that up is I don't necessarily, I say like Tippett, Michkov, Couturier, and I do like 135 minutes for that line together, 2.6 expected goals and 63 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Pretty good numbers. 4.3 goals per 60. That's high because they're shooting 13%. But if they're shooting 10%, it would still be a good 5-on-5 line. Even at like 9%, like they would still be kind of fine. And one of the big notes was Sean Couturier got moved to the top power play unit. It gives them 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play. Not that the Phillies baseball season is upon us. Not that the Flyers power play has really been anything to talk about at basically any point this season, but having 2 guys on the top power play is better than none. So if I were to do anything on the Flyers side for a stack, it would be Tippett, Michkov, Couturier, 15,300. One of the reasons is these guys are not coming in with much ownership. I'll bring up the latest ownership projection run we have for the Flyers. Travis Sanheim, 7.5%, same as Noah Cates. Everybody else basically 6% and under. Like, I know the Flyers have a 2.2 total. I can tell you right now that I don't think I'll be 3-man stacking them. But considering how low the ownership is on their top guys, and like the Flyers put up 3 goals on Tampa Bay just last week and won the game. Like, weird things can happen in hockey. Bobby Brink had 2 goals and an assist or whatever it was. Those things happen. So if I was playing 20 lineups, I think I'd be more inclined to play the Flyers in an MME than I would be in a single entry. Like Michkov, one-off, stuff like that, I think is fine, especially where Michkov at 5,400 is pretty reasonable. Even with the team not scoring very much, the guy is 36 shots on goal in his last 10 games. He's been shooting a lot since the Four Nations break. So I think Michkov as a one-off makes sense. I think I'm be more inclined to do that than full stacking anything, but it is that Tippett line that I would play. The reason I bring up the beat writers and what Philly's lineup is going to look like, it's more important to me for the Tampa side because we still don't have an update on Rasmus Ristolainen. Rasmus Ristolainen has been their best defensive defenseman this season. And if you look at their goals against, when he's been in and out of the lineup, it does matter. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, the goaltenders here for the Flyers, not very good. Chicken and egg argument. Like, is it the defense that's causing bad goaltending, or does it bad goaltending make the defense look bad? I think that's fair to ask. But Rasmus Ristolainen has the lowest goals against rate of any of the regular Flyers defensemen at 5-on-5 this season. He has, I think it's the second lowest expected goals against rate. Only Cam York is better. And like Ristolainen has been really good defensively for them for a few years, like basically since he got there under Tortorella. And without him at 5-on-5, they lose their best defensive defenseman. Without him on the penalty kill, they basically have 2 defensemen that can PK now, and that's York and Sanheim, and that's it. So all of a sudden, getting rid of Ristolainen turns this into from a good matchup to, I think, a great one. So I would kind of have to see whether he's in or out before I make any real determinations. I don't think I would play Gensel, Point, and Gord because I agree with you. I would want power play guys. Like, I'd be more inclined to take Gord out and put Kucherov in. Here's the thing is, over the last 2 years, Braden Point, when he's on the ice at 5-on-5 without Kucherov, 2.4 expected goals, 2.5 actual goals. That's basically league average. Somebody in our chat asked what's going on with Braden Point because he's been cold lately. He hasn't been playing a ton with Kucherov lately, I think, is a big part of it. Now, the line hasn't been the same basically since like Christmas, but Braden Point is a good player. Kucherov makes him a great player. Think of like Martin Necas and Nathan McKinnon. That's kind of what it is that Braden Point is the Martin Necas here, and Kucherov is the Nathan McKinnon. And so anything I do with Tampa Bay, I want Kucherov in it. So that's why, like, in a nutshell, I'd be more tempted to go to Kucherov, Hagel, Sorelli, 19,900, 21.8% top 2 stack. It is if you want to make it cheaper, I think you can take out Hagel and put in Bjorkstrand. Now, I did that on Saturday night, and on 6 Tampa Bay goals, I got 1 assist and 4 shots. Am I stupid enough to do it again? You bet I am. So like a Kucherov, Cirelli, Bjorkstrand 3-man, like something like that is probably what I would do. I don't hate like stacking across lines on a slate this small. It really doesn't bother me because you don't need a big game from Bjorkstrand. Even if he doesn't score, if you can get like an assist and a few shots, like that's fine. You know what I mean? So like Kucherov, Cirelli, and Bjorkstrand, or Kucherov, Hagel, Cirelli, the 3 of them is just fine. Kucherov, Hagel, Bjorkstrand, something like that is kind of where my attention is. Like no matter what I do with Tampa tonight, I have Kucherov in the lineup, and I just kind of go from there.
Yep. New Jersey Devils with a 3.2 total heading into Columbus. Our Blue Jackets with a 2.8 total. Surprisingly, this game doesn't suck. It's probably the only one you can say on the slate that arguably doesn't suck. And we got an update, by the way, if you are following along with Top Stacks. Devils going Meyer, Hischer, Nason, Bratt, Glass, Halla, Mercer, Palat, Tatar. New lines for Columbus. They're going Fantilli, Jenner, Johnson, and then Marchenko, Voronkov, Chinnikov. I wonder, because they moved, I'm wondering who's going to go out against the Nico Hischer line. I don't think it's going to be Fantilli, because they've been sending out Jenner. Oh, I'm an idiot. They're on the same line. Do you have any? I think it's going to be Voronkov going out against Nico Hischer. I don't know what you think about that.
I imagine it's Boone Jenner.
Fantilli, Jenner, Johnson.
Yeah, that's
interesting because
they were using Jenner and Johnson as a shutdown duo anyway, and that's something that's gone back years. It's like basically under like every Columbus coach they use Boone Jenner in a shutdown role.
That's fair. So that's interesting for Frostback's Russian line. They're going to avoid the Nico Hischer matchup. They're 14-7. They're not fully correlated, and I know we've talked about Chinnikov not being fully healthy. Like, listen, you could be medically cleared with a back injury, but your back can still fucking hurt. You know what I mean? Like, if you've never had back problems, you don't know what it's like, but if you have, then you certainly know what it's like. I don't mind taking a stab at them at 14,700, 3.2% projected ownership. They do have a 2.8 total. They're going to avoid that Hischer line for the most part. They might see some of it. But last year, was it 2 years ago or last year? Everything blends together, but they were really, really good together. You get Voronkov and Marchenko on the top power play unit now. It's not a very good penalty power play spot. The Devils generally have a good PK. However, they are missing Hamilton. They are missing Siegenthaler. So it has been on a slide a little bit. The problem is the Columbus power play has been on a slide. Voronkov got taken off. Jenner got put on. Voronkov is back. I don't mind that second line. I don't mind the Fantilli, Jenner, Johnson line. I don't think I'd full stack that line. Maybe I'd have a Ken Johnson one-off, a Fantilli one-off, something like that. But if I was going to full stack a line, it'd be Marchenko, Voronkov, Chinnikov. The Devils side is pretty interesting here because it's a good 5-on-5 matchup. It's a good power play matchup. Nico Hischer and Timo Meier the past few games have been 21, 22 minutes. Their price reflects that. Timo's up above 7K. Nico Hischer 6,800. Stefan Nason on that line's only been playing 15, 16 minutes. And what I've noticed is Jesper Bratt has been playing like 22, 23 minutes of late, and he's on the top power play. So I think you could power play stack that line, go Hischer, Meier, Nason. That makes it 20,300, right around the price of Boston one.
You mean Hischer,
rather play
Meier,
that.
Bratt.
Yeah, I don't know what I just said, but yes.
Okay.
Hischer, Meier, Bratt. Yeah, 20,300. They're right around the same price as Boston won. I'd much rather play them than Boston won. I think that's what I do on the Devils side. Listen, I know Cody Glass has looked great since he's gotten there, but like, I don't know, man. Like, I guess you could do a Glass Brat 2-man if your heart really desires, but for me, it'd be Devils 1, and I'd probably leave off Nason and add in Brat.
Yeah. On the Columbus side, like I watched the part of the Columbus game on Saturday. Obviously, I was watching the Habs, but had that on a second screen. The shifts I caught of Chinnikov, and then I looked at the stats the next morning. It looked like it was his best game. So maybe the game that he was healthy scratch just gave him a little bit of extra time to rest. I don't really know. It does worry me that, because this isn't a guy that was necessarily a big play driver. He was a skill guy. You know what I mean? Playmaking, playing off the rush, those types of things, certainly scoring at times. He's not a guy that necessarily drives the play. So like if his back is slowing down any of his playmaking or any of his ability to generate off the rush, that's something that does really concern me. Last year that line was pretty, I don't want to say pretty good. They were good offensively. 59 shot attempts, 2.9 goals per 60, shooting 10.6%. Obviously, now they're under a new coach. I would probably be more inclined to go to Fantilli, Jenner, Johnson, honestly. I know that they're probably going to go. That's not ideal, but Jenner and Johnson have legitimately been very good together since Jenner got healthy. 110 minutes for Johnson and Boone Jenner since Jenner came back. 66 shot attempts, 3.6 expected goals per 60, 6 actual goals per 60. Obviously, they're shooting very high. It's nearly 19%. But even half that, they'd be over 3 goals per 60 minutes. That's pretty good. And you get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play in Johnson and Fantilli. I would kind of be more inclined to go with them. Another thing is like, if they're going to use Boone Jenner in a shutdown role, that means they're probably going to get a fair amount of ice time with Zach Werenski as well. And I definitely like playing the lines that get more ice time with Zach Werenski. So I think for me, it's Fantilli, Jenner, and Johnson. Olivier Danforth and Zach Aston Reese is an interesting third line. 240 minutes together, 52 shot attempts, 2.4 goals per 60 minutes. That stuff is about league average, but league average for a third line is pretty good, actually. They're at 8,600. The New Jersey depth has just been absolutely just decimated because of injuries. Dawson Mercer and Thomas Tatar are the third line on the other side. 74 shot attempts against, 3.9 expected goals against in their 60 minutes together. They've been just a train wreck defensively. Seems like that Columbus third line could have a decent night. So if you are like power play stacking Tampa Bay or something like that, and you do need some cheap players like a 2-man of like Danforth, Olivier, I think something like that makes sense. But it's the Fantilli, Jenner, Johnson line I like best on the Columbus side. For New Jersey, it's the top line. And I think I agree with you. If I were to play the Devils here tonight, I would take out Nason and put in Brat. Brat's just playing too many minutes. It's just one of those things you can leave him off and it can work, but leaving off a player that's basically playing 21, 22 minutes and is probably the best offensive player that they have now that Jack Hughes is out. It feels like running pretty thin to me. And another thing is this is a good power play spot. Columbus does not have a good penalty kill. It's not atrocious. It's not like Buffalo, San Jose bad, but it's the next tier of bad. And New Jersey's power play has actually been good since Hughes got hurt. I think that's the most surprising thing out of everything. It's only been 4 games, so grain of salt and all that. But the power play has been good. So I think I would go Meyer, Hischer, Brat, just kind of make it more of an expensive stack. That's where I would go with New Jersey. I'm going to be honest. I think I'm more inclined to go with the Columbus side here. Maybe I'm just Charlie Brown with the football after Columbus got shut out in back-to-back games last week. But this has been a really, really good offensive team, regardless of who's been injured or not. I got to think that they bounce back somehow. So for me, it's the Fantilli line. then some sort of New Jersey power play stack, and then Columbus 3.
I can't even hum it correctly, but all I hear is the Charlie Brown piano song in my head now, which is honestly better than what's usually going on in my head. So Calgary Flames with a 2.4 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 3.2. As Frank alluded to, this game sucks. The Leafs have they're like 1-5-1 in their last 7 or something like that. They suck. Toronto going Matthews, Marner, Nyes. The new lines lasted 1 game. Nylander, Tavares, Holmberg, McMahon, Robertson, Domi. Calgary going Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil, Coleman, Coronado, Frost, Sharangovich, Farabee, Hunt. So I think on the Calgary side, the one line that would give me some interest, and I don't have a ton, would be Frost, Coronado, Coleman at 13.8. They're coming in with negative leverage, 4.4% top 2 stack, 8.5% projected ownership. The reason is, Coronado and Coleman have been pretty good together this season, mostly with Backlund. Frost, I really don't know what Frost truly is, but he's similar in a sense to Backlund. So I think that line could, put up similar-ish numbers. One of those lines that creates fairly well, just has problems finishing. But you do get Coronado and Frost on the top power play unit. The Leafs penalty kill sucks. If you wanted to, leave off Coleman, adding Kadri, it's an $1,800 bump. 15,600. It's fine. I think I just leave Calgary 2 as it is. You can go to Calgary 1 here, but 15.3 is a bit expensive for me. Like Kadri 1-off is in play always for me. 6,500. I think I'd be more inclined to go Coronado, Frost, Coleman. On the Toronto side, Toronto's the most expensive line in the night at 21,200, 26.8% top 2 stack, 11.3% projected ownership. The Kadri line has been fine defensively, and it's Wolf in net, which is nice. It's just the Calgary penalty kill is bad. Not like Blues, I can't stop a nosebleed bad, but pretty close. They've been pretty bad. That line's fully correlated, but again, if I'm going to do anything with the power play, it's going to be with Nylander. So I think at that point, I'm stacking across lines because they're going 5-forward power play. I think I just go Matthews, Nylander, Nyes, Matthew, Nylander, Marner, something like that. I think, the one guy, I think 5th on the list for me would be John Tavares. And he's, now I've locked in a huge game from Tavares, but he just hasn't looked great recently. But the 2 guys I'd build around are Matthews and Nylander. At some point they're going to break out. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But
yeah, I was going to say, are they?
Are they though? Again, I don't know if I'm spending up for the Leafs here. I kind of agree with Cliffy that I'm probably going to be in the mid-range somewhere. And if I do spend up, I think it would be for the Devils. But for me, it would be some sort of Toronto power play stack. And the 2 guys I would absolutely build around are Matthews and Nylander.
Yeah, what sucks for me is that they're putting Pontus Holmberg back with William Nylander. And I say that sucks because
he's Kerfoot.
Yeah, they're not good offensively, right? Nylander and Holmberg have played over 230 minutes together, 2.6 actual goals, 2.7 expected goals. It's a little bit above league average, but for a William Nylander line, that's bad offensively. But they've been really good defensively. Holmberg has helped stabilize the defensive numbers for basically any line he's been on this year. Nylander and Holmberg on the ice at 5-on-5, 2 expected goals against, 1.5 actual goals against per 60. Those are really good defensive numbers. And the defensive numbers have been good with John Tavares as their center. Why I don't like that is that now gives the Leafs theoretically 2 good defensive lines. Whereas, if they had their old line configurations, they only had 1, and it was the Matthews line. Every other line was awful defensively. The best thing this Leafs team could do is I mean, the second best thing this Leafs team could do is put Scott Laughton on the fourth line. The best thing they could do is just healthy scratch him. But what that does is moving him down the lineup makes the top of their lineup better. It makes their second line better. It makes their third line better. So like I actually, like when I started going through the slate like 8 hours ago, Calgary was one of the teams that I circled that I was interested in playing some mid-price players because the Leafs middle six was garbage. Now that Craig Berube kind of figured out that he shouldn't give Scott Laughton, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander as wingers because that's a waste of Mitch Marner and William Nylander. This lineup configuration is probably the best that the Leafs can do, and I'm a little less enthused about going in on Calgary. Honestly, if anything, I would probably go Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil. I might take out Pospisil and put in like Coronado or Frost or something like that. The only reason is ice time. Like with Backlund hurt and Zari injured or suspended, I should say, and all that. Like I think Kadri played 23 minutes on Friday night and Huberdeau played 22 or something like that. Like these guys are going to get a lot of ice time. Even Pospisil, who normally plays like 11, 12 minutes, had like 16 minutes of ice time in that game. These guys are going to get a lot of minutes. And while I don't really love the matchup, Huberdeau and Kadri on the top power play, they're going to play 20 plus. So I think there's still some interest for me for Kadri and Huberdeau. And like they've been fine with Pospisil. 2.5 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals per 60, shooting 9.3%. Those are actually good offensive numbers. So I think it's Calgary 1 for me. I think Calgary 2 is very much in play just because they'll also get ice time because Calgary's just not going to play the fourth line. So like Coronado and Frost are probably both going to get like 18 to 20 minutes. They're still going to get good amounts of ice time, but I think I'd go to Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil. On the Toronto side, it would be the top line. Calgary has been taking a lot of penalties and has been for a while. Calgary, 3.1 times shorthanded per game, just behind Buffalo that I talked about earlier by 0.01 over the last 5 weeks. If you go back to January 1st, Calgary's taking the second most penalties per game, or spent the second most times, has given up the second most power play opportunities, is what I'm getting at since January 1st. So Toronto should get their fair share of power play opportunities tonight. The top power play unit, the 5-forward power play, has been good for them. At the very least, I would go Toronto 1. Normally, I don't like leaving off Nylander. This is one situation where I'm not completely against it just because it does make, if you take out Nyes and put in Nylander, that is a really expensive stack, right? You're looking at 23,200. For me, it's just not the way that I'm building here tonight. I would be more tempted to just go Toronto 1. I think Toronto 3, McMahon, Robertson, Domi, some 2-man off of that. Robertson and Domi, McMahon and Domi, something like that is fine. But it's Toronto 1 that I generally have the most interest in here. I honestly think I'm on the Toronto side. I honestly think I'm more interested in Calgary, generally speaking.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I want to wait for the Toronto breakout before playing them, but I also want to get the breakout game. You know what I mean? I just, on this slate, I think I'm going to take a pass as well. Let's get to the last game of the night. I'm seeing conflicting lines here. Maybe you have definitive lines on the wing, on the Wild. Is Marcus Johansson up with Rossi and Zuccarello?
They didn't have an official morning skate today.
Okay.
They switched last game. They moved Marcus Johansson to the top line, like I think for the second half of the third period or all of the third period, something like that. So I
just wasn't sure if they ran lines. I couldn't find them. But anyway, that could be the lines. But they started last game at Boldy, Zuccarello, Rossi, Hartman, Hinestroza, Foligno, Nyquist, Gaudreau, Marcus Johansson, Kings, running back, Fiala, Byfield, LaFerriere, Kempe, Kuzmenko, Kopitar, Fogle, Moore, Danault. It's kind of annoying because they could go to those lines from the end of last game. And also, Boldy, Zuccarello, Rossi are getting a lot more ownership than I expected. 14% top two stack, 12.6% projected ownership. Like, listen, like I know the Kings aren't as elite defensively as they were at the beginning of the season, but like 12.6% going up against still arguably one of the best 5-on-5 defensive teams in the league is too much ownership for me. Especially that we don't know definitively what the lines are going to be. I'm going to take a pass on the Wild here. If you want to play them, that's fine. It's just not something I'm looking to do in single entry. Also, they're not great defensively, and they're going to go out against that Fiala-Byfield line. And that Fiala-Byfield line has been very, very good this season. So I'm much more likely to play Fiala-Byfield LaFerriere at 16,000 and 3% projected ownership than the Minnesota top line for $1,400 more and 12.6% projected ownership. So I'm out on the Wild here. Again, on the Kings side, I think it would be Fiala-Byfield, LaFerriere. The one thing is, it is a really good power play spot. So if you do want to go to Kuzmenko, Kopitar, and Kempe, I think that's fine. But it's not the best 5-on-5 matchup for that line, depending on what the lines are. So for me, I'm just going to go, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And for me, that's Fiala-Byfield, LaFerriere. Again, if you need a little bit cheaper, I'm fine with Fogle, Moore, and Danault.
Yeah, on the Minnesota side, here's the thing is, like, since we know that Fogle, Moore, Danault line has generally been very good defensively this year, that Byfield, Fiala, LaFerriere line is at 2.1 expected goals against, 1.1 actual goals against since the Four Nations break. They've been great defensively. And even the top line, Kempe and Kopitar, since Kuzmenko got there, 2 expected goals against, 2.3 actual goals against. Like, that was the one line, other than the fourth line, that was the one line whose play had really been sliding over the last couple months. And at least in the 5 games since Kuzmenko got there, it's been stabilized. I've said before, I'm not a huge Kuzmenko fan. I did post over on, I think it was Blue Sky today, that his goals above replacement impact using the Evolving Hockey model, the stats website Evolving Hockey, even without his 27% shooting in Vancouver or whatever that season, just the last 2 years, he's been a top line player. I think maybe I was underrating his impact. I don't know. I don't think I am, but I'm certainly willing to be wrong on that one. 2 years, 3 years of really good play is nothing to kind of turn away from. And like I said, even if you take away his best season, he's still been a fringe top line impact player. That's not nothing. So, like, this is a really tough defensive matchup for Minnesota, like, for their offense. The fact that we're not going to know what the lineup is until warm up. Morning skate was optional today. They said probably the same lineup, but there are game time decisions. So who knows what that lineup's going to look like for Minnesota at warm up. So, one off Boldy, if you want a one off like Rossi or something like that, like, okay. But this is a pretty bad matchup. We don't know what the lines are. They've just been really going through it since all those injuries hit. Like, it started with Kaprizov, but especially with Eriksson Ek and Brodin out. So I'm kind of out on the Minnesota forwards. On the Kings side, I think I would go back to Kempe, Kuzmenko, Kopitar. Like, I have no issue going to Fiala-Byfield, LaFerriere. Don't get me wrong. Fiala's on the top power play unit. Byfield's probably going to get the most ice time out of all the forwards. That line's been really, really good. The thing is like I said, that Kopitar line's been good since Kuzmenko got there. 69 shot attempts, 3.5 goals per 60 minutes. And they're perfectly correlated on the power play. The Kings have a bad power play. Minnesota also has a bad penalty kill. This is one of the very few matchups where I would say the Kings power play is as bad as the penalty kill that they're facing. So maybe they can pop one on the power play. They're cheap enough where they don't have to go ham. Like, at 16,900, they're a mid-price stack coming in under 2% ownership. Under 2% ownership for a perfectly correlated line that's under 17K with a 2.9 team total on a 5-game slate. Those things all appeal to me. So I think it's the Kempe, Kuzmenko, Kopitar line on Los Angeles, and maybe some one-offs on the Minnesota side.
Let's talk about defenseman, and Cliffy is right. If you're not spending up or spending way down, the mid-range is an absolute circus on the blue line here tonight. Top of the board, we have Werenski at 7,800, Rasmus Dahlin at 7K, then Uyghur, Hedman, Hughes, Riley, Rasmus Anderson, and Mason Lowry, 5K and up. That's a crazy price for Mason Lowry. I think, the four guys that I circled are Werenski, Dahlin, excuse me, Werenski, Dahlin, Uyghur, and Luke Hughes. I think Hedman's in a fine spot as well. I think for me, it'd be Werenski 1, clear and above at 7,800. After that, you can spend up again or you can spend down because in the mid-range, it's a bit rough.
Yeah, it certainly is. Werenski, he has the top projection of any defenseman on the board. And he's almost 2.5 points clear of Rasmus Dahlin. And he's nearly 4 points clear of Mackenzie Weegar. So, he has the strongest point per dollar value of all three. So I really do like Zach Werenski here. If you want to go to Dahlin instead, absolutely no issue. He's $800 cheaper. That $800 could really matter. But I have Werenski at the top of the board. I do like Uyghur because this is a good power play matchup for Calgary. Rasmus Anderson has been getting, he does get quite a bit of ice time. His last 4 games, 23 minutes, 24 minutes, 27 minutes, 23.5 minutes. Like, facing the Leafs, this is one of those games where I think you could easily rack up the shot block bonus. I mean, this guy has averaged something like 2.4 blocks per game or something this season, including nearly 2 shots per game. For that, $1,000 cheaper, I don't mind going to Rasmus Anderson. I'm not really a fan of Bo and Byram, but Boston is bad, and Byram plays 20 plus minutes. So, take that for what it is. Travis Sanheim is projecting well, even though it's a pretty bad matchup against Tampa Bay. Like, he's okay, but for me, it's like Werenski, Dahlin, Rasmus Anderson, maybe Luke Hughes, because it is a good power play matchup for New Jersey. If you want to get cheaper, like Jake Middleton is fine. Nick Seeler for Philly is interesting. I would only play him if Ristolainen is out, but if Ristolainen is out, Seeler might play 18, 19 minutes. And this is a guy that puts up a lot of blocks, even in minimal ice time. So if Ristolainen's out and he gets 18 minutes, I think he could really easily crack that block bonus. So I don't mind Seeler. Ryan McDonough is in a good spot. Nikita Zadorov has been getting 20 minutes. For cheap guys like Joel Hanley, Eric Chernak, Declan Chisholm got back up to 20 minutes in Minnesota's last games. Those are basically the 3 guys I'm looking at. Joel Edmondson is projecting well. It's one of those mental blocks. I just don't know if I can play Joel Edmondson, but Joel Edmondson is projecting well for under 3Ks also.
I mean, the Jim Hiller or whatever his name is loves to play him 21 minutes for some reason, so he'll be out there. Let's talk about some goalies. There's 3 goalies, 8K and up. It's Woll, Allen, Vasilevsky. It would probably be Vasilevsky for me. Need a win in best puck badly from Vasilevsky tonight. I think you do as well for any sort of hopium. Don't mind Vasilevsky. Don't mind Woll, but I prefer Vasilevsky. In the mid-range, it would be both goalies in the Kings wild game. Kemper at 7,800, Gustafsson at 7,600. And if I'm spending down, it'd probably be for Dustin Wolf at 7,400.
Yeah, Vasilevsky and Woll had the 2 highest projections, and it's not really close, actually. Even Woll is 2.3 points, DK points higher than Kemper by the projections here tonight. So I think they're the 2 expensive goalies to go towards. I would probably lean Vasilevsky here, but I think both are perfectly fine. For the cheap guys, yeah, like Philip Gustafsson, I think makes the most sense. Minnesota's at home. It's not like the Kings have a good power play to take advantage of a bad Minnesota penalty kill. So I don't mind Gustafsson for cheap. I'll mention Jet Greaves as well. It's that he's 7,100 and it's a 5-game slate. Maybe you need to save the extra money. But, I don't think I would go a whole lot cheaper than Philip Gustafsson. I guess The case I would make for Dustin Wolf is that if Calgary wins that game tonight, it's probably because Wolf has a really good game, right? It's like if Calgary wins, it's probably not because they won 6-5. It's because they won 3-1 and Wolf makes 29 saves. You know what I mean? So I think that's the case for Wolf, but I would probably rather play Greaves.
Yep. We will be back tomorrow. Cliffy for sure. My younger son, Agent Spencer, as some of you know, is getting surgery. So as long as we are home and I am home and he is doing well, I will be here. But we'll be here tomorrow, Thursday, and Saturday. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Timo time tonight, baby. Timo Meier.
As always, as you would say, I hope the Leafs get their brains beat in. Matt Coronado.
Fair enough. I would love to see it.
Yep. Cliffy, for sure, we'll see you tomorrow. I would say I am 75. I am probable, as they say in NBA. So we will probably see you tomorrow. Good luck, everybody, and we'll see you in the Discord.
Good luck tonight, everyone.